Transition, the process of change from one condition to another.
We are now at a new crossroad where change is evident once again.
What does not serve us must transform us anew.
Returning to our original state of oneness and true nature of that which created who we truly are.
Confusion was the way of the past. Enlightenment is the way of the now and future, shedding away the layers of deceit.
We now bring you the transformation of the two who started as one. Our fearless planet never stands still.
Earth has been in a process of transition, and we are not exempt from this remarkable ongoing reality.
Welcome to Transition Radio.
Well, hello, and welcome to Real Talk with the Cummings. My name is Mark Angelo Cummings, and people, we normally don't say our name, right?
And my name is Lena, Ariel Cummings.
Yeah.
And you're watching us here in Silver City,
Mexico.
Went to that nice Christmas parade that we just
Oh,
had.
yes, we had a
Pretty
really
cool.
nice Christmas parade. It's been kind of chilly. We got our Christmas tree. It's over on that side, which you can't really see.
That's too bad I can't see
Let me
it.
see if I could try to, do.
I'll just turn the camera.
It'll
It'll mess up the shot.
It'll
though.
mess up the shot, though. I was trying to see.
She works so nicely on it. Did you see our nice new little ball we have?
No, I don't want to mess it up.
No, it's
so.
okay. You can't really do that.
Yeah.
You can't really show it. I thought you were gonna.
No, I was
show
going
a
to try
picture.
I was going to. Oh, we have pictures that
Yeah.
we do have. Let me see here. I could find one of those pictures for you somewhere in our.
In the meanwhile, we got this nice little ball at the Family Dollar.
Yes.
For
it's a
$3.
cute- For $3.
Cute little thing, and the Christmas tree and all of its
Glory.
ornaments and lights.
I'm
What was it,
trying
like
to find
$30?
$34 for everything.
$34.
But I sure would have. No, here we
Phil says, "Yay, coming stream." Hi, Mark. Hi, Lena.
go. Hello, Phil.
Hi, Phil.
Let's see here, so I could share the little Christmas tree picture. There we go.
Ta-da!
Ta-da.
There's our tree.
That's a picture of a tree.
Such a beautiful tree.
Yeah. Look at that. With
Aw,
all these little
so nice. Ornaments.
Ornaments.
The kind that don't crack.
I know, right?
Remember before? If you
Oh, I
dropped
know.
one?
When you drop it. And that used to happen all the time.
I know.
And now they're making them shatterproof, which is awesome, right? Totally awesome. But anyway, that was a treat for you guys. And thank you, Phil, for joining us. So what else did we do this weekend? We did the parade. It was kind of cold, but not as cold as it was last year.
No,
you know?
not really. Not as bad. Not as bad.
And it was a cool.
So that was pretty nice just to go there and sit and watch the parade. We had the MC right next to us.
Yeah.
You know, we had like a really nice front row seat.
Yeah, we
It was
did.
like right as the parade route kind of turns over to the left. We were like right down that corner.
Yeah,
It was really cool.
So what's crazy things are going on in the world? They're tear gassing.
Chaser. Hello, Mark
Hey,
and Lena.
Chaser. Hello, how
Hi,
you doing,
Chaser.
Chaser? So they're having this thing with what are they calling them? Not the migrants. They're calling them something.
Oh, the
Asylum,
refugees.
refugees
Yeah.
or whatever. They're throwing all sorts of tear gas, and it's just crazy stuff.
It's kind of sad
Yeah.
that it has come down to that. But if you realize that there's a pattern of these types of things happening in the world, and it's not just here in the United States.
No, it's all over
it's
the
like,
world.
it started like, the Syrians and stuff and Albanians and stuff trying to escape from their countries because of the poverty and the problems that they were having,
God, yeah.
and Venezuela is in a real upheaval, and so many of these countries in Latin America are really suffering in
Oh, big time.
massive ways.
And people don't realize that history is repeating itself. Go back to history, back in the Roman Empire, things of this nature was happening. And we just watched a clip of a video earlier today that was explaining it. But there are signs, telltale signs that you see in the past that are being repeated today. And that kind of should make us wonder what is going to happen next.
Yeah, it's almost like, it's like a double-edged sword, because here you have these people that are trying to get in to make a better life for themselves. And on the other side is our government saying that they're going to protect us by building that wall and
or
keeping
closing
us
the
behind
border.
it.
Yeah.
And then closing the border. I mean, the president said that he was not, opposed to literally closing the entire border to our country. Do you realize that that makes us in prison in this country?
And I don't know if many of you have ever watched, was it Colony or something like that?
A show called
Colony, which there was like this wall being built to keep people from coming in, but it also kept people from going out. So, I mean, I don't know. Some of these things that are being created for our protection is actually for our slavery, and for our incarceration.
Oh, but we're doing it for your protection.
Yeah.
Now, apparently, years of chemtrail controversy have now been explained, whereas the people that were labeled conspiracy nuts are now oh, wait, you're not so crazy after all, because they're saying that they're going to be spraying the skies to protect us from global warming.
And I've been telling people to look up in the sky and the chemtrails, and everybody's like, you're crazy. That's just contrails. Airplanes do that. And they've always made fun of me. And I knew something wasn't right. And now they're trying to explain it away, and
now they're telling you that they're going to do it. And just the other day, we saw crisscross patterns all over our Silver City skies. And it was I've never seen this many.
Yeah,
I mean, it's now that they know they can do it, now they're are we ever going to see the sun again?
Oh,
I mean, we saw it today.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
Stuff. We're living in a crazy world, and people are dead asleep. Anyway, a few days ago, we tried to have a conversation amongst trans women, right, who are calling a trans woman who recently was interviewed by the New York Times, who was speaking very candid, in my opinion, about transition and surgery. We need more people to speak candidly about these things. Many refer to this individual in a very derogatory manner, as most trans people do when we don't speak their language and cheer their madness on.
So
from the article,
why should a doctor perform surgery? It won't make the patient happy. It won't accomplish its intended goal. It won't improve the underlying condition. It might make the underlying condition worse. And it might increase the likelihood of suicide. Chu, the trans woman that
the article's
about, wants to turn the profession of medicine on its head, transforming a medical doctor into nothing more than a highly competent hired syringe, in the words of Leon Katz.
Unfortunately, Chu isn't alone. Many professionals now view healthcare, including mental health care, primarily as means of fulfilling patients' desire, whatever those are, Cass explains.
The implicit and sometimes explicit model of the doctor-patient relationship is one of contract. The physician, a highly competent hired syringe, as it were, sells his services on demand, restrained only by the law, although he is free to refuse the services if the patient is unwilling or unable to meet his fee. But Chu's vision of medicine turns the doctor into someone who merely satisfies desires, even if what is done isn't good for the patient.
And that's what we're seeing nowadays, whether it's with trans kids or whether it's with trans individuals, that at a certain age, which I believe that you shouldn't put your body, under these conditions of abnormal type of surgeries that the body is not meant to undergo unless it's a life or death situation, and they're doing it because you're paying them the money. They don't care if you die on that operating table.
They don't. My friend that just recently got out from having their reassignment surgery, which is, I don't even know why they call it reassignment surgery.
There's no reassignment of it.
They should just call it feminizing, masculinizing surgery.
Yeah.
But basically, they went under the knife 10 times in 5 days.
Yeah. Emergency type of surgery because things were going wrong. They had a systemic infection going on, and then I guess things just kind of got messed up. So they were like pretty much trying to repair. And you know, one of the things that's very hard to duplicate is a urinary system. You know, with the guys when they do the phalloplasty, the urethra, they have a lot of what they call as fistulas, and the same thing goes for MTFs, and they go in through they use some of the intestines actually to try to create some of the depth, and then that has problems, and it's just like it's crazy. I mean, it
is, and these doctors are taking an oath to do no harm, yet they don't find anything wrong in doing harm to someone who's perfectly healthy otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they're not feeling congruent within their brain, but that doesn't mean that their body isn't congruent already within themselves.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the body. The body's perfectly fine, and genitals were working great, breasts are working great, you know, things that shouldn't be messed with, but we're messing with it because we believe that by doing this, somehow magically we're going to be turned into this gender that we will never become.
And the crazy thing is that they think that, you know, just because they want it, that gives them vindication for having it done.
Exactly.
You know, and it's like, you know, doctors will explain, therapists will explain to these people that no amount of surgery may correct the problem that they're experiencing. We all know now that the problem isn't within their body.
No.
It's within their own psyche of how they see themselves, how they respond to themselves, how they love or hate themselves, you know, how they have been traumatized by
either sexual
circumstances
abuse
or people.
Sexual abuse, childhood traumas, self-loathing because we were made fun of some way or another, shame for being a lesbian or being a gay man. I mean, there's loads of different, and we had a show discussing all the different reasons. If you look in our playlist about the different reasons for gender dysphoria. But whatever the reason is, we can't be ignorant to believe that cosmetic surgeries are going to magically turn us into the gender we wish to be.
Because they will never do that.
Yeah.
They will never do that because it is not physically possible. Hi, team.
Yeah. So in this conversation that I was having, and then you joined in as well, you know, it was like everybody was battling, and, you know, I was trying to be as respectful and mindful.
This was a trans woman's wall.
Yes. The same trans woman who had the surgery, had all the complications. And I'm trying to learn to be a little bit more diplomatic, a little more gentle in my approach and my speaking, to be more compassionate so that I could be helpful, you know, and instead of coming off as some belligerent person. But I maintain my cool, put up a bunch of links to studies. There's a lot of studies that show that after transition, the suicide rates are higher, that there is a lot more complication. There's a lot more diseases. People end up getting cancer, heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, you name it, a slew of different things because you're messing with the endocrine system. But anyway, along came my hero. For the first time in my 15 plus years post-transition have I heard the most amazing words. I'm going to keep them anonymous, but here's what they said. I'll put it this way. When I look in the mirror, I no longer see a disgusting man. This is an MTF, of course. I just see a disgusting person. I still have my other issues to deal with. It's the same with many of us. I feel that some get lost in transition and forget they have other shit to deal with.
I also think this article was aiming toward that, just that it's contrary to what we want to think about, and dissonance kicks in.
Yeah.
Put your fists together, that's about the size of your brain.
Right.
The part of it that governs your sense of identity is about the size of a grain of rice. There is plenty more room for effed up to occur.
That is why I think issues can be worse after surgery, because it only offers a solution to one thing. I honestly can't say I know any trans people, me included, that does not also have some kind of depression, bipolar, borderline or PTSD, as well as any number of other issues. I also know that the majority of trans people I know who have admitted to having other mental health issues hide them from their doctors and therapists because they are afraid of being denied transition. Tell me you guys don't do that. Okay.
Everything is so effing polarized that people aren't being honest and seeking well-rounded care, wherever that is.
Right.
Because of what some boogeyman conservative might do with the data, like that article that just came out.
It's the same person we're speaking about here.
Or what they're afraid doctors might do with the care. And nobody is talking about that. And anytime one of us speaks up about it and tries to have a reasonable discussion, we are told by other members of our community to shut the F up.
And that's so true. And that's so true. I see that time and time again. It's happened to us time and time again. You know, people go, well, you got to do whatever. Yeah, we did. And that is why we're warning you. And that's why we're telling you this thing it's not a magic pill. It's not a magic potion. It doesn't take away your problems. But for many people, the problems become even worse. They're dealing with health issues. And now their dysphoria with the article that was written about this person that we're talking about, their dysphoria became worse. Hormone made them feel even worse. And this happens to a lot of people, but it's not talked about. Why? Because we're afraid that we're going to get the boot from the trans community, that we're going to get ousted. And what's the word? What is it that they do to people? That they dox people because they want to shut us up. They want to shut everybody that doesn't sing the same tune. And that's wrong, people. Both sides need to be heard.
So then the person that actually did the
article about,
she posts another thing, saying, and here it is, picked up by an outlet of Focus on the Family. It's already being used against us. And then you get like the ire of the trans community, saying, who didn't see that coming? Wait till the politicians pick it up and run with it. I wonder if they're making money on anti-transgender behavior. And, it's like
they always do that. At one point, they were saying that we were making money from conservatives and not a penny. We do this to educate because, it's wrong to only have a one-way street. You have to know the good, the bad, and the ugly. And people are getting seriously hurt when they transition. Their families are getting seriously hurt. No one is thinking about the bigger picture. It's just that momentarily instant gratification that you feel you're getting. But as you age, as life goes on, you start to realize that everything that you've done didn't solve anything. It's just that obsessive compulsive Asperger-y mind that puts on the blinders as a one-way vision. And until you don't wreck yourself like a runaway train, you ain't going to stop.
And then someone else writes, it's sad that for all the volumes of supportive text written on the subject, just one negative op-ed gets punished that gets published that undoes all the progress. I don't know the answer because far be it from me to censor another trans person. But this type of expression just emboldens the anti-trans folks. And it's like, you know what? There's a reason it emboldens them. Is because many in the trans community are simply pissing a lot of people off. They are. And they're making lots of enemies.
Because they want to push this down people's throats. Back in the day when I transitioned in 2003, I wanted to educate, but I did it in a manner that was quiet, that it wasn't down your throat, that everybody had to sing my tune, that everybody had to see me. It's like this trans generation now, the trans advocates now are causing more harm than good. And they're destroying what many of the older trans people try to build and educate and get people on our side.
Yeah.
Now people are not on our side anymore. People are just pretty much repulsed with what they're seeing.
There's 330 odd million people in this country, and 1.7 million of them are trans.
Yeah.
Now that's a massive majority of people that see things probably differently than we do, and don't have a clue how to understand what we're going through or what we deal with.
Exactly. And, the solution is not the solution that has been handed down to us. But Chase, you just said, when I go to the VA for counsel, I tell how it is. I also tell them I'm in recovery and don't want your pills. Okay. with all due respect, Chase, what is it that you're exactly trying to accomplish? You're 59 years old. You, according to what Lena read, you've been in a relationship for 25 years. Why would you want to stir the boat? You know, why just not express, dress, you know, be you, Chase, you know, you're working out, you're eating healthy, putting yourself under the knife at 59 has a lot of risks. You know, surgery is no gain, you know, and especially as we get older, it's a lot harder. And, you know, I'm glad you're not on testosterone. You say you're trying to do it natural, which is great because testosterone does come with side effects, as does estradiol. I've had friends that have had strokes. I've had friends that have died at 40-something years old because of testosterone, because it increases your blood pressure. It creates heart attacks, you know, strokes, all sorts of different things. So, you know, I'm not telling you what to do, but really think it long and hard that what's the pluses and what are the minuses? You know, what's the pros and the cons? You have to really weigh this out. In the long term, as you get older, what has it really, you know, going to accomplish?
And also, what I failed to see early on was the fact that I needed to have compassion for other people and take what they're going through into consideration.
Exactly.
Which, you know, apparently trans people are very good at just pretending like those people's
live experience or their life doesn't matter.
That their opinions don't matter, and that their lives are not as important as ours. And yet, you know, we end up hurting people in the process. We end up destroying marital relationships. We end up making our once, you know, and I remember telling my now ex, you know, I know that you don't want us to be lesbians, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, we were so like brainwashed to thinking that something's going to happen that isn't physically even possible. And the whole thing is that, you know, it's like you're, you know, in your case, you've been in a relationship with your wife for years and years.
Right.
And, you know, it's a lesbian relationship, and your wife loves lesbian relationship.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. So you're going to be forcing her to change her sexuality.
Change her sexuality for you, you know. And it's like, I understand how gender dysphoria is. I understand that gender dysphoria is actually a scapegoat to excusing ourselves from dealing with the real issues that we have to deal with in life, and that gender dysphoria is really not the core problem.
No.
It's a much maligned type excuse that we give, you know, for those that deal with these things and find answers and solutions in gender.
Right.
You know, but, you know, I mean, it's like we can't force everyone else, including the ones that we love the most, to have to go along with something that they don't want.
They don't want. And you know, some people love the person they're with enough to be able to just accept it because they don't want to be the one telling them, no, you're not going to do this. But then what about the person who's transitioning? Have they thought about their loved ones and what their loved one wants, and how you're going to change your loved one's reality completely? You know, and for those that have kids, how you're going to change your kids' reality completely. I mean, it's like a storm that just came in and just ripped everything apart and didn't have any mind for anybody but itself, you know?
Chaser says, I've had a surgery hysterectomy. And then Phil says, but don't both of you want to live as the opposite gender? Isn't that better than the alternative of pretending to be something you're not?
How do you pretend to be something you're not when you are actually biologically that gender, that sex? Yeah, I mean, obviously trans people want, you know, to be the opposite sex, but we will never be. We will never be. It doesn't matter what we do, we will never be. I mean, it's like we've got to, like, today's day and age, the world's turned upside down. People are believing things that are not believable.
You know what we really do wish, Mark and I both, is that people would recognize a third gender.
Yeah.
You know, so that there's no confusion.
Yeah.
So that a person who is transgender, or whatever this is supposed to be, this balance between the two genders or something, that people like us would just be recognized for being different.
Yeah, like they did in Scotland now, the third gender is being recognized, and that's what we are. We're a third gender. No matter what I do, I will never be a man. That's just impossible. I'm not going to put myself through some horrific surgery, missing a part of my arm, to try to create a penis, a phallo, that's not going to work and is going to put my health in jeopardy. A trans woman that tries to create a vagina, that is never a vagina. That's a wound that's trying to heal itself. Hence why you have to create that, what is it called, dilation all the time, because the wound is trying to close itself up. And we're just putting ourselves in all sorts of danger. And, it's just like what we want. How many people want so many things in life and can't have it? And things that really matter. People that are blind, they would love to see, but they know they will never see. And things of that nature. We've got to be grown-ups. We have to live in reality. They've allowed this unreality to take place, and I think it's the biggest hoax it's like harmful. They've harmed us even more.
I think that I don't know, things confuse people with us because we choose to live as we do, yet we advocate strongly against, it's like, Phil says,
but Mark clearly presents as male and Helena clearly presents as female. Your chromosomes are irrelevant to the long run. No, they're not. Just because you present yourself, and again, when I did this back in 2003, had I known what I know today, I probably would not have done it. But we were sold a lie. Okay, we were sold a lie. I go to a doctor now, and if I have to, like, God forbid, I have a car accident and something happens to me, they're not going to treat my body like a male body because they would end up killing me if they're putting the medication of a male dose or doing things to my body, because my body biologically is a female body. Okay, how one expresses and presents itself has absolutely nothing to do with the actual reality of biology.
Well, Phil says, why isn't the third gender just being a transgender person?
It should
my
be.
answer to that, no. My answer to that is that most trans people in the community would not want that, because what they want is what they can't have, and what they can't have is to literally become the other sex.
Right.
And that's the thing that they like get angry, literally get angry, because they demand to be in spaces like, here you have a trans woman, we'll be reading about it later, that wants to undress in a female-only gym and present themselves naked with their equipment and then pass that off as somehow being female. And instead of like shoving that type of ideology down someone's throat, I think it would be better if they would just not do that, because that just makes people angry.
Right.
I mean, women are actually leaving the gym because they don't want to see that.
Right.
So I mean,
and I wanted to, where Phil says, isn't that better than an alternative pretending to be something you're not? So when a woman is born and that woman has, and I've known a lot of women like this, I was a lesbian since I was 13 years old. They're very masculine. Some masculine women that I've had friends with or have even, gone out with, more masculine than half the guys that I've seen in the world, okay? But that doesn't make them a man, okay? What's this thing that we now, this society, thinks that, okay, just because you're a man and you're born sensitive and you enjoy playing with Barbies better than you enjoy playing with G.I. Joes, or if you're a woman and you enjoy playing with G.I. Joes rather than a Barbie, and you want to take your shirt off, as I've seen many little girls that don't want to have their shirt on because they like to play roughhouse with their brothers, that doesn't make them the opposite sex. That's just them. That's their personality. That's their expression. Why do we all of a sudden have to be this in-box, like, if you do this, then you've got to be this, and if you got, no, we need to just like break all those boundaries and let people be without having to put them in a gender box.
well, Mark and I were talking about, certain things on our way to have breakfast on Sunday morning, and we were talking about what ended up becoming the topic of this show. What is the function of dysfunction?
Exactly.
And, it's like, like it or not, you know, it's a dysfunctional thing, what we do
Yeah.
when we do choose to live opposite of our original sex
Right.
reality. Because, you know, my function in the past was to be a dad and have 5 children and have a wife and have a career and have, you know, the respect of society and stuff like that. And now what is the function of my dysfunction? You know, it's like I can't have babies.
No.
I can't really be a mom because my kids already have a mom.
Yeah.
I can't really be, you know, no matter what you did working at Walmart and when we were apart and stuff like that. And if a woman wanted to, you know, was interested in you, what function would Mark serve?
Yeah.
A female that
Exactly.
would want a relationship,
Who would
with
want a
man
baby, and I couldn't
and
father
a future.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the only function for many of us in this community is actually to be someone's fetish.
Yeah.
Someone's like, you know, toy. Someone's like, you know, taboo experiment. You know, because that is basically where we get to with all of this. You know, it's like, and it doesn't matter how beautiful you are, how handsome you are, how passable you are. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
Because at the end of the day, you're living a dysfunction, you know, and I know I struggle with the whole concept, and I struggle with the fact that I do have this dysfunction, you know, but I also realize that I don't really serve a constructive purpose in society, you know, for making the world, you know,
the intended biological function that we as humans are meant to be, versus what this whole agenda has become is a very self-gratification, very fetishistic, not just in the people that fetishize us, but we fetishize ourselves, like the trans guys that want to build the big muscles and you know.
And I'm not saying that it's just for reproducing. Honestly, I'm not. I'm just saying that, you know, when it comes down to it, male-female relationships in the broader sense of how society functions, where, you know, maybe 6% are gay or lesbian, you know, in this world, the majority of people on this planet aren't going to look at, you know, that function of us in society as being something that is necessary. You know,
we're living in a very dysfunctional world, Phil. You know, we really are. I mean, there are things that we as human were intended to do that we're not doing anymore. I mean, people are in front of a computer all day in their iPhone. I mean, the planet is being destroyed. People don't care about each other. I mean, everything is being turned upside down, but it all starts from the basics. You know, if we're telling people that black is white and white is black, you know, and we're just confusing everything, bad things will happen, because that's, I mean, that's the way the law of nature works. I mean,
I just know that for me personally, that, you know, Chaser recently was watching one of my videos from 2014, and I was saying things in there that were so self-centered, so self-consumed, so like self-oriented, and it was so narcissistic in nature. And instead of trying to empathize and understand the plight of those that loved me as I originally had lived my life, then, you know, I was like making excuses and calling them out and saying, why don't you just accept me? And it's like, you know, it's like, I just see myself back then as being so self-absorbed and so selfish, you know? And I honestly don't think that that's any way to live, you know? And a lot of us in the trans community, we are so self-absorbed. I mean, the mirror is like our idol, and we take Instagram pictures and Facebook likes, and, you know, I mean, we're always searching for, you know, approval.
Exactly. And Phil, you said that our purpose is not for reproducing, but why is it that the LG have wanting to normalize their life, they wanted marriage, They want to be able to have kids, just like everybody else. You know, what is the plight for the LG now? It's like they wanted to get married like everybody else, and they're all either seeking for surrogate mothers or they're trying to have babies. FTMs are getting pregnant because they want to have a normal reproductive life and to bring children into this world.
MTFs are wanting to have kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they're trying to, you know, get off hormones so they can produce sperm so they can get a surrogate mother. So if that's not what we want, then why is the world, even in the LG, trying to normalize themselves? And also, you mentioned
that's what it means to live with equal rights in our society.
But it's not about equal rights. What's equal rights? Everybody's like floating around with this equal rights. We're all human, and we all should have human rights. You know, whatever color and whatever else it is, but we can't force things down people's throats that they don't see as normal. The bigger population, the 330
million
people, you know, are living a normal life. They don't have to be forced to understand, to accept the small amount of people that are rebelling against the normalcy. And Chase, you talked about the great fact is that everyone has the right to live their journey, but I do agree strongly about the education. What is living your journey? Before this whole trans thing took place, everyone lived. I remember back when I was 17 or even a bit younger, I'd go to gay bars. Okay, there was drag queens, performers. There was very feminine gay men, and there were very butchy women, you know, and some of what they called lipstick lesbian. People lived, they were happy, they had a journey. No one talked about changing their gender. It wasn't even in their vocabulary. But all of a sudden, this thing has become, you know, public view. It's become a programming. It's become the thing to do. It's become a eugenic experiment. Okay, and now everybody wants to do it. What was it something the other day about in the schools that there was a ton of and everybody in the schools were like 17, a whole bunch of like people were transitioning at the same time that being abnormal is seen as normal.
No, there was a little 12-year-old girl who told her dad that everybody at her school now, it seems like being different was the new normal or something like that.
Yeah, that's
like,
the thing.
You know, I mean, her words were, and this is just wisdom from a young, you know, 12-year-old saying that my 12-year-old daughter just hit the nail on the head. At school, it's not cool if you're normal.
Yeah, and that's what people want. Yeah, it's like I remember when the lesbian thing was the end thing, and it was cool to be gay or being lesbian, and you know, it's like girls would kiss each other, even though they weren't gay. It was just like the thing. The new thing now is being trans, and stable relationships and health insurance. I've, you know, lived in the LGBT community, like I said, since I was like 13 years old, and started going to gay bars when I was 16, getting in, you know, with fake IDs and all that stuff. And stable relationships and LG kind of is an oxymoron, because I know that, you know, the famous line with lesbian is like the U-Haul, you know, you move in, they get in right away, and then they break up. And with a lot of my gay friends, which I had many gay friends, the ones that didn't die of AIDS, you know, they were like monogamy and polyamorous, and you know, there was nothing stable about it. Not saying that there isn't any stable gay relationships, there are. But even in those stable relationships, they're still, you know, they do their own thing to bring somebody in, you know, so.
Mark, you've touched on my worries about gender ideology as a gay man. It erases acceptance and self-expression in the name of trans acceptance.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand what you're saying here.
You've touched on my worries about gender ideology as a gay man. It erases acceptance and self-expression in the name of trans
Exactly,
acceptance.
and what most gay people do not understand, that what trans is what is that called? That kind of therapy?
Is a type of
conversion therapy. Yeah, they're trying to convert people not to be gay. So it's like they'd rather have, oh, my child has a birth defect. They're born with gender dysphoria, instead of, no, my child's a feminine man and he might possibly be gay.
Because if you go outside the box, you are immediately trans.
Right.
And it's like,
Exactly.
you know, most trans people, they don't want to be known as trans. They want to become, literally become the other gender.
Yeah. And God forbid you tell them
it's
otherwise.
like, you know, and one of the things that I've noticed is that in the older generation is that their mothers, if they're still alive, are instilling into these older people that in order for them to see them as a female, that they have to get the surgery, because that's the only way that they'll ever be seen as a female. And that is just so like limiting to place a woman in the classification of a woman as being just a body part.
I know.
You know, I mean, it's an essence. It's a functional purpose in life. It's a connection to this planet. Yeah. You know, it's
There's
an
so
awareness.
much deeper stuff.
You know, it's much more than what
than just a genital and the reconstruction of a genital, just taking some hormones. I mean, anyway, we got a lot of stuff to cover. So let's see what it is. The bottom line, Mark, you did go through it. So can't you be supportive of others? I did go through it. And because I did go through it, I realized, and not only did I go through it, I've lived and been around trans people of all walks in life. When I lived in Florida, no one's ever happy, Chase. I'm telling you right now, you're thinking that you're going to do what you're going to do, and that's going to bring you happiness. It might do it for a little while, and then, you know, the brain kicks in. You start feeling like an imposter. Things start happening in your life that you start realizing it. So no, I cannot be supportive of self-mutilation. I cannot be supportive of people living a non-reality, because reality is we're not a mistake. We're born exactly how we were meant to be born as. We're just different, and we should embrace that difference instead of trying to say, I love you, but I'm going to fix you. I need to like fix you so you can fit into this gender box and fit into what society wants you to be, instead of just being a masculine female and you know, and be happy with who you are. I mean, that's what I could support. Anyway, there's I found this study that claims gender nonconforming children were different gender in their past lives. I mean, I remember when I was younger, I used to tell my grandmother, Jehovah's Witness, who hated the fact that, you know, I was a lesbian, saying, well, Grandma, what if I was a man in my past life?
Yeah,
you know, right. I used to always, you know, fall for that kind of thing. But, you know, maybe just like, maybe she likes baseball, or maybe she was Babe Ruth in past life. KLI-19 Getty, I guess, whoever wrote this article. A trio of academic hosters recently made news after managing to get 7 non-essential papers accepted into peer-reviewed academic journals, including one about rape culture at dog parks. So when I recently heard about a new academic study examining gender nonconforming children in past lives, I thought for a moment the hoaxers were back.
Nope, this one is real. Researchers from the University of Virginia studied 469 children who claimed to have memories of past lives, and using, quote, logistic regression, unquote, a form of statistical analysis, they found that children who remembered a life involving a different natal sex were much more likely to exhibit gender nonconformity than children who remembered a same-sex life.
If you take this to its logical conclusion, I believe what the researchers are saying is that the reason I dress like a captain on a fishing boat may be because in past life I actually was a captain on a fishing boat, or more likely the one puking off the side of the ship.
The study was published in the International Journal of Sexual Health, and Jim Tucker, one of the paper's co-authors and psychologist at the University of Virginia Division of Perceptual Studies, is one of the foremost reincarnation scholars in the field, which apparently exists.
Tucker, the author of the book Return to Life, Extraordinary Cases of Children Who Remember Past Lives, have reportedly compiled a large database of past life accounts in the world. And as he has found, plenty of people insist they have memories of a life before this one. Just go to Burning Man and ask around. What you will find strangely is that while plenty of people believe they were healers or shamans or kings or chiefs in past lives, almost no one remembers being a pauper or a peasant. Go figure.
Still, there is no empirical evidence that past lives even exist, and until Tucker and his colleagues can come up with evidence that is much more than anecdotal, I'm inclined to think that reincarnation is as much a fantasy as the Garden of Eden. Now, I just wanted to say, we read a book about
Many lives, many masters.
Yeah. And that was very interesting because it kind of, kind of conflicts with what is being said here.
Right.
Because it says no one remembers being a pauper or a peasant.
Right, but
I remember them saying in that book that, one of their past lives was as a peasant or as a prisoner.
Right.
So
but typically
I don't know.
people don't, unless you go regression, like what was it, Dr. Weiss was his name or something like that. He would put people in hypnosis to try to heal them from certain things, but he went really far into past life regression, which freaked him out. It was an interesting book. I read it a long time ago and recently read it. But even though past lives, and I believe in reincarnation, I've always believed that this is not the only time we're here. We've done it before. But just because we reincarnate in another sex doesn't mean that, it's like nothing's wrong with our genitals. Everything's working just fine. So is it your turn?
However, gender nonconforming children, while not Jim Tucker's field of expertise, are certainly real. I was one. As for why some kids don't conform to the gender roles, it could be that gender roles are arbitrarily imposed on children with no rhyme or reason, and some kids simply reject that.
I did. Some girls want to play baseball, some boys want to dance. That said, multiple studies have found correlation between childhood gender nonconformity and adult homosexuality, which is what we were talking with Phil. It's like it's a conversion therapy. They're trying to eliminate homosexuality. The jury is still out on what exactly causes same-sex attraction, but it's likely has something to do with both biological and environmental factors.
Some studies have shown, for instance, that younger brothers are more likely to be gay than firstborn brothers, a phenomenon called the fraternal birth order effect.
Yes.
Possibly because of the levels of particular antibodies in the mother's immune system increase with each birth.
And that's why it's very common with older mothers and then their last child, like within Jazz, the last child, and a bunch of trans-identified kids or gender nonconforming kids. Mother's usually older. They've had either fertilization treatment because they were not fertile towards the end of their lifespan, and we're starting to see a lot of this gender confusion take place. And of course, some gender nonconforming kids grow up to be straight and others grow up to be trans. Oh, did I miss one? Other researchers have suggested there's a genetic component to same-sex attraction, although we know from twin studies that genes can't explain everything. And of course, some gender nonconforming kids grow up to be straight and others grow up to be trans. As a sex researcher, Ken Sugar told me in an email, when it comes to the reason for gender nonconforming, it's a simple question with complex answers, but past life is not one of them. I thought that was like, because I used to tell that line to my grandmother, and she'd look at me and she'd like, no.
Yeah.
But just that.
What is this article? Are we seriously crediting past lives with being gay or trans? No, we're not. We're saying that the article states that is probably not a reality.
Yeah.
Of course, there are some people out there that do believe in that. I mean, I had a trans friend who was of the belief that, they were definitely,
they thought, it's just like excuses that people will use to, bring their gender dysphoria, their transsexualism into like, look, I was this in the past life. I mean, the things I've heard.
Or just the concepts of like, I knew when I was 2.
Yeah. Everybody says that. 2 or 3
Everybody knows when they're 2.
Yeah. I knew when I was 3 years old, between the ages of 2 and 5. Those are like if you remember what toy you had.
I mean, you come up with all these scenarios in your brain.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're real or not. Yeah. Or if you just like
create them,
came up with it as a figment of your imagination to bolster the reason for being the way that you want to be.
Exactly. Yeah, and then it's like everybody says it, so it becomes a programming. Because I remember back in 2003, there were maybe 2 or 3 websites talking about transgender individuals. And they started saying that, and then everybody else started saying the same thing. You hear the same stories being repeated, and before you know it, it becomes your own reality. And you're like, oh yeah, I remember when I was a little kid that I used to tell mommy I'm not a boy, I'm a girl, and stuff like that. And it's like, it makes absolutely no sense.
So Chaser says, thank you for notifying me about this. Are you going to decorate your house for Christmas? Well, as much as we did.
We showed in the beginning of the show, we have a little tree.
Our Christmas.
But yeah, so we showed
LOL,
pictures.
I'm a woman. Oh wait, we've gone off the deep end.
LOL, I'm a woman because in the past life I was Cleopatra. That's right, Phil, right? I don't hang out in the trans community. And you're probably not missing anything, trust me, because I remember
A lot of times those support groups
Oh my
are really
God.
just bitching groups.
that and just people that are very angry, very unhappy. And then they think that magically when they start taking hormones or magically when they get to surgery, they're going to be happy. You know, they become even more miserable, more depressed, more anxious, you know, and it just messes with your brain even more.
And it's also like this culture of like the older trans people are looking at the young ones like, oh my, you
Yeah.
know, and it's like,
They
if
live
I
vicariously.
only
through
could
it.
have, you know, and it's
And
like,
some of them are a little creepy in the things that they do. Anyway, transgender kids, have we gone too far is the next article. What happens when your son tells you he's really a girl? 20 years ago, you probably would have crossed your fingers and try to wait it out. Today, you might buy him a whole new wardrobe, find someone to prescribe hormone blockers, and help him live as a girl. Maybe he'll even become a celebrity. A recent McLean magazine cover posing that very question featured a lovely 11-year-old with long, flowing locks and enormous eyes. His name used to be Oliver.
suddenly transgender kids are everywhere, in the news, on Dr. Phil, and in your neighborhood. School boards have developed detailed transgender policies. Clinics to treat transgender kids have sprung up all over the world. A condition that used to be vanishingly rare,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps 1 in 10,000 children or less, now seems common. In a random sampling of 6th to 8th graders in San Francisco, kids are asked if they identified as male, female, or transgender. 1.3% checked off the transgender box.
That's kind of scary. Very scary stuff. Anyway, what's going on here? To find out, I sat down with Dr. Ken Zucker, one of the world's foremost authorities on gender identity issues in children and adolescents. As head of the Gender Identity Service at the Center of Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto, he has worked with hundreds of kids like Ollie.
The number one factor is the internet.
Yep.
If you're struggling to find out where you fit, the internet is filled with things about gender dysphoria.
Yep. When we ask, when did you first learn about this label of gender dysphoria? They'll say, me and my mom watched Oprah. Adds Dr. Haley Wood, a member of his team.
I watched Donahue, you know, back when I was a kid, and I know it wasn't as common to see shows about gender dysphoria, you know, and then later on came along the Jerry Springer show.
Yeah, that showed a lot.
Which was like all the time. But yeah, the television, it was a massive educator for me.
And the internet, I mean, it was
internet.
It's like,
huge.
this is why we're having an epidemic. Because it's brainwashing, it's programming, it's telling kids that, hey, you're not okay the way you are. You know, it's awkward to be a girl, so you're going to be a boy. Or it's awkward to be a boy. You don't want to be like a boy. You want to be like a girl because you don't fit into like the other boys, you know, and things of that nature. Or telling people that they're born wrong. And that's wrong. There's nothing wrong with them.
Gender dysphoria, formerly known as gender identity disorder,
It should have been stated that way.
means being at odds with your biological sex. It's not the same as being born with ambivalent genitalia or even being gay. The popular shorthand is being born in the wrong body, as Jazz Jennings would say.
Right.
Although that formulation probably does more harm than good. Sex reassignment surgery is appropriate for some, although by no means all adults who are unhappy with their gender identity. Some go on to live significantly happier lives temporarily.
Very temporal. Actually, the research states that no, they don't get any happier. They get more mental issues. It becomes worse because now that the end of the road is there, what else is there? They can't focus on the project anymore. The project's done. Now it's like, oh my God, what do I do now?
But it's not just that. It's the fact that as they age,
Mm-hmm.
the body that they chose to sacrifice at the altar of change now is trying to live and progress and age gracefully And now, since it can't do that, they find themselves having serious health issues. And we have a friend who didn't do her show because she has some massive migraine issues.
They've had to stop hormone use for a while now because the hormones make the migraines even worse. You know, your body starts, it's almost like rejecting what you've done. And it may not happen right away, you know, but as we get older, the body gets wiser in many sense of the word, and it rejects what you've done to it. And diseases start coming up. And migraines is one of those things that hormones can give you, you know, as a person.
Bill says, have you responded to the recent article in the New York Times about the trans woman who regrets transitioning?
Yeah, I think that's what we were talking. That's the one we talked about.
That's the first article that we kind of glanced on.
Yeah,
we didn't read the article.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did respond to some of that.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of my friends are straight, Chaser says. And then Phil says, oh, now I see the past life thing is because of parents.
Yeah. Yeah. They're trying to explain everything, you know, and justify everything because they don't want to have a feminine boy or a masculine girl. They don't want to see their kids as homosexual. And this has been like the greatest thing for parents to go, oh no, little Jimmy is not gay. He's a girl. She's actually Jamie, you know, and that's pretty sad.
So then he said, oh,
go ahead.
No,
I don't know which one you're
I'm a teacher.
Oh, I'm a teacher in a rural state of a small school, 200 students, and there are like 15 transgender students, most FTM. A lot of the FTM, which used to be rare before, now I think the programming has become for FTM, and a lot of them have autism or Asperger's and neurological impairment.
But a lot of times, the reason that it's FTM is because, you know, females tend to be more click oriented. So it would fit the characteristics of female behavior to do this whole like social change. You know, it's like you ask a man, a guy gets up and he's like, I'm going to the bathroom. 3 other guys aren't going to follow him along and say, can I join you? No, it's the women, you know, it's like, I'm going to go with you.
Yeah. So Chase, what does that have to do with anything? A lot of your friends are straight. What does that mean? I mean, what's your whole, I mean, I had a lot of straight friends too, and I had a lot of lesbian friends, and what is that? So do you feel uncomfortable identifying as a lesbian and around your straight friends and thinking maybe that if you transition that you will feel more comfortable? Is that, I mean?
And then 10 years ago, Phil says they would have just been emo or goth.
A lot of goth, yes, definitely. And back was it the 80s? Or no, was it, yeah, the 80s or the long, I mean, everybody kissed the band. And, and everybody was androgynous. And, you know, bands would wear makeup. And it was just like cool to be different. And that was cool.
Not cool in my circle.
Yeah, well, not in your Christian circle of friends. But
not
in my circles, it was cool to be different like that. So Chase says, I think it's cool that you do this. There's all kinds of viewpoints. Exactly. And then it's important that people hear the different viewpoints, that it's not just like, go and do this, is great, your life is going to change, and then you do it, and then you're like, God, my life ain't any better, it's actually worse. But nobody told me, you know, so it's important to hear all the avenues, and you can make a good decision.
And we're not really always going to agree, Mark and I, but, you know, on a lot of things, you know, we do tend to agree with, you know, and having lived this experience, me for 5+ years now, and you going on almost 20, you know, it's like, you know, there's like 2 different generations of thought going on here, two different types of, 2 different places in the journey, on this journey of transition and stuff like that. I mean, it's like, I see things differently, because he's already gone through a lot of things.
And I've been in the LGBT, gosh, like I said, since I was like, my first relationship was when I was 13, when I was with a female. And then I started hanging out in the LGBT community since I was 16. And so I'm 54. So I've been in this community for a very long time. I've seen a lot of things. Chase says that her friends come from a 12-step program. Hey, I'm not dead, you know. What do you
That's
mean by
good.
That's good.
That's good. Nobody wants to die.
No.
Or people to die.
So, because I don't know if you read something that, you said something about you don't want pills because you're in recovery. So, you have to be very careful. I've come from a very addictive personality as well in the past. My father was an alcoholic. I used to do drugs, luckily I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do anything anymore. I've worked out all those issues and all those addictions that I had. But you could tread in very dangerous grounds with this gender dysphoria thing, because it's just another addiction that you are going to get into, and it's going to become tunnel vision. And if you have any type of Asperger-y type of personality or OCD, it will really, capture your interest to the excess, to the point where you won't stop till you finally finish the project that you are creating. And that could be very dangerous.
Phil says 2 generations, quote unquote, in less than a decade. It's unbelievable how quickly the community has changed. I never even thought I'd see transgender kids become mainstream.
Tell you the truth, the first trans kid that came out, Jazz Jenny, I was, back in the day, I was interviewed by everything. I've been on every talk show, Spanish talk show you could think of, Maury Povich. I've done documentaries. The Miami Times did an article on me, and I spoke to the reporter about Jazz. At the time, Jazz was 5. Jazz's mom contacted me. She saw me in the Maury Povich show, and they went to meet me at one of my book signings. And, I spoke to the reporter regarding Jazz, and the reporter goes, "Do you think I could interview them?" I said, "I don't know. They're kind of trying to keep it down low because, it's only 5 years old." They did the article. 2020 hounded me because Jazz, Jenny, and the family they were anonymous. They didn't have their real name. And I had to convince the Jennings, to do the interview with Barbara Walters. I was the one that brought in Jazz Jennings and the family to the picture. Back then, there was hardly no trans kids around. And now, it's gone crazy.
Back in 2010, there was an interview with a woman who has a transgender kid organization, Trans Youth Family.
Kim Pearson?
Kim Pearson.
Yes.
And she was interviewing Autumn Sandine, an older trans woman. And they both went on record during an interview as saying that their goal was to get society to have compassion for transgender people by getting the children to become transgender.
Yeah, that's like their human shield.
Through the children, that acceptance for the adults would happen. So it wasn't that they were caring about the children.
They're using them.
They were using them to justify who they were. Because they're like, well, if I would have gotten the treatment when I was 12.
Yeah, that same group of people contacted me, and I, went and flew up there. I was doing a documentary. I was going to do a documentary on them, and they wanted me to be, the head leader of, and I was just like not all for it. And, they knew they couldn't manipulate me. So, that didn't get to pass. But it's a very, gosh, I hate to use the word evil, but it's a very evil agenda, especially when you're using children. It's good that you're getting counseling, Chase. It's good that you're really get to know Chase. What makes Chase tick? Remember that gender is a very small percentage of who we are. That it's okay to be a masculine female. It's okay, to have expressions that are different from the typical female. It's okay to, to be proud of who you are without having to want to be something else to fit into society.
And, if society sees you differently, then that's society's thing.
Problems,
it's like Phil was saying to you, Mark. He said earlier, that
he sees me as a man.
Yeah, bottom line is that, he sees you as a man, and it's like there's nothing that Mark can do to take away the masculine essence that is instilled inside this person.
Yeah, and that's
You
the way
know,
it's been since I was a
it's-
little kid, without the beard, without anything. It's always been my MO. I mean, my old mom used to make fun of me. You know, every time she tried to put a dress on me, she would tell me I looked like a truck driver walking with a dress, you know, and it's who I am. But that didn't mean that I was a man. It's just I was a very masculine female, you know, and that's and there's many masculine females out there. I mean, there's some, like I said, I've known some women that were putting men to shame. And I was probably one of them, you know. But here came along this, "Oh, you mean I don't have to feel shameful for who I am anymore? You mean I don't have to worry about holding the hand of my girlfriend? And if I could turn into a guy who could be like a heterosexual couple, I'm in." That drew me in. It was like, wow, I don't have to feel shame anymore. I don't have to like hate men because I was sexually molested anymore. I could become a guy and beat their asses up. And, you know, these are things that we think during that time because hurt individuals create abnormal coping skills. And that's what this has become, an abnormal coping skill. So anyway, where we got? Okay. For the kids, I guess. Is that
But for kids, especially younger ones, the issue is much more problematic. Gender confusion is often temporary, as they would say. About 3/4 of little kids who have issues with their gender, boys who want to be princesses, girls who throw their dresses in garbage, will be comfortable with it by adolescence, according to Dr. Zucker.
Many of them will grow up to be gay or bi. Gender confusion can also be a handy label of whatever ails a child or her family. That's why Dr. Zucker takes a watch and wait approach. He even advises parents of princessy 6-year-olds to say, "You're not a girl, you're a boy."
And in the hotly politicized world of gender politics, that makes him, in many people's eyes, a dangerous reactionary. They argue that a child's identity must be honored, and that treatment should start sooner rather than later. They equate the watch and wait approach with the widely discredited practice of reparative therapy, which was a failed effort to turn gay kids straight.
Two different things altogether. They don't realize that the reparative therapy is the transition. They're trying to like make a little boy that's very feminine and likes, you know, soft things into a woman. I mean, that's also very disrespectful for women because not all women like soft things. Not all women like pink. Not all women like to be all girly. You know, so that's like we're trying to put people into boxes, and that's wrong. I mean, that's crazy. With the advent of powerful new drugs that delay puberty, the stakes in this debate are even higher. Start them early on puberty-blocking drugs, and their eventual transition will be easier. But which kids? What if you're pushing them on a path they don't need to go down? And what point do you start taking life-altering decisions for a child that will have enormous physical, social, and emotional consequences?
Alice Dreger is a bioethicist and professor at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine in Chicago. She calls herself an impatient advocate who prefers evidence to ideology. She is a strong supporter of trans rights, but she thinks the pendulum has swung too far.
Way too far. One reason is that social norms have dramatically changed. It is now fashionable to embrace your diverse child. Parents who encourage their kids to change gender are socially rewarded as wonderful and accepting, while parents who try to take it slow are seen as unaccepting, lacking in affection, and conservative, she says.
These days, parents who don't like the slow and careful answer can shop for another one. Ms. Dreger is highly critical of what she calls the hasty clinics, quote unquote, which are happy to help a kid transition right away. Parents don't like uncertainty, she says. They'd rather be told, here's the diagnosis, it's all going to turn out just fine. Teenagers can find help fast too. Plenty of doctors are happy to help them out with hormone treatments just for the asking.
And this, to me, is child abuse, is malpractice. It's not responsible. It's like, where are the studies? Where are the cases 50 years down the road? 50 years past. There weren't any. That's because there weren't any other thing. This has become an experiment. For some people, including some adolescents, transgender treatment is life-saving. But these treatments are neither simple nor benign. They may, among other things, retard maturation, which we've seen that with a lot of the kids that have been on blockers, suppress your growth, or render you sterile. And in the end, medical science cannot create a body that makes you forget you were born the other sex. It ain't gonna happen. Some kids need it, but for the kids who don't, it's dangerous. And I don't think any kids need it. I think just, it's just accepting, who you are. She says, all else being equal, it's better to avoid long-term hormone therapy and major surgery that removes a lot of tissue. There is not one single objective testing that can prove that somebody's born in the wrong body. So you're going to sit there and alter a person's body, damage them for life because of what they feel? Since when are we in the business of changing feelings or doing something, people don't get to self-diagnose. I mean, when you go to the doctor, you have chest pains, you have an EKG to see if you have a heart problem. You have an x-ray to see if you have cancer in your lungs. We have objective testings to find out what's going on with you. This transgender thing, there's no objective anything.
Disturbingly, data on long-term outcomes for trans kids are scarce. No one is tracking the evidence on puberty blocking intervention either. And a recent conversation that you had with the trans woman that had the surgery, my friend, they stated that they were talking to a university or something, and they said that we don't track.
Yeah, they don't have,
we don't track.
And they're thinking about maybe getting cahoots to try to get some interest in doing that, because it's important to know, okay, how much success are we really seeing with all these, protocols?
But the fact is that this issue, the only way that it is profitable is by doing it the way they're doing
Exactly.
it. I mean, what would it benefit them if they found out that these surgeries that they perform on people is actually causing more harm than good? I mean, do you think they want that red herring out?
It's the same thing with chemotherapy and radiation. You think that you're the vaccine thing, they're trying
cell phone use.
Yeah.
Or Wi-Fi signals.
Exactly.
Or 5G thing. I mean, all that stuff that is eventually going to hurt everybody.
Yeah.
Or the, chemtrails or all that stuff,
it's killing us.
Why do they want to let people know that it's bad for you? We are doing major interventions, and we have shockingly little idea what the outcomes are. Ms. Dreger says, you get the sense that what we have is not so much a rational approach to a psychosocial issue as a radical ideological experiment.
Here's more unwelcome news from Ms. Dreger. A child's gender issue may merely be a symptom of other families' problems, which is what I call child trauma. The dirty little secret is that many of these families have a big dysfunctional issues. When you get the clinicians over a beer, they'll tell you the truth. A lot of the parents aren't well in terms of their mental health themselves. This is what I've always been saying. They think that once the child transitions, all their problems will magically go away. That's not really where the stress is located. Clinicians won't say these things publicly, she says, because they don't want to sound as if they're blaming gender problems on screwed up families, which is what the case is. Every trans kid parent that I met when I was doing the documentary, they were all screwed up. Every single one of them. And you're like, God, no wonder the kids the way they are.
It's a mark of social progress that we are increasingly willing to accept people on their terms for who they are. But maybe, just maybe, we're manufacturing more problems than we're solving. If we really want to help people, we should remember the old rule. First, do no harm.
Yeah. I remember this one mother of a trans kid. The trans kid had behavioral issue, but the mother, do you remember what I'm talking about, the blonde?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my
In
God.
the Growing Up Trans series?
Yeah. And no, we actually were friends with them on Facebook at one point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you just don't have a clue.
They had like a selfie obsession.
Yeah, and they had issues, a lot of mental health issues. So and then they just, the child becomes a project, because it makes them forget about their own problems, but it's pretty sad. Anyway, if trans women are women, what is a woman?
What is a woman?
If trans women are women, what is a woman?
We are often asked to believe that trans women are women. Many people are happy to accept this claim, but those who disagree are treated to ridicule or abuse until most dare not to speak up.
Yep.
As a philosopher, this worries me. We should be able to question the truth of any claim without causing offense, but I cannot imagine that I will get away lightly from doing so here.
In this piece, I argue that those who think that this is true, that trans women are women, do not have a coherent, unequivocal definition of woman, and thus whatever they do understand by the term should not form the basis of legislation. In brief, if we say that being a woman has nothing to do with having female biology, as required by accepting that trans women are women, then there are three unattractive options.
One, being a woman is essentially tied to traditional social stereotypes of what being a woman involves. Number two, there is no difference between women, or men, or a large number of people are both or neither. Or three, it is impossible to tell whether someone is a woman or not.
None of these three options is a workable definition of women, and yet, if we remove external checks on which male-bodied people are permitted to apply for a gender recognition certification, and thereby legally become women under a new version of the UK Gender Recognition Act, the law will be committed to at least one of these three options. As a philosopher, I find it profoundly worrying that a law could be based on such an incoherent definition. At the very least, the application process for a gender recognition certification should retain the requirement for medical and/or legal approval to lend some credence to the process, although there are problems even with this option.
These definitional difficulties disappear if we admit biological sex as a determining factor of whether someone is a woman. This may still permit some transsexuals with severe dysphoria to count as women if there turns out to be a biological basis for their condition, which could be verified. And it is still consistent with insisting that people who regard themselves as transgender should be able to live their lives free of discrimination and abuse.
I would like to emphasize that I have repeatedly asked trans activists who are in favor of the proposed changes to the Gender Recognition Act to provide me with a definition of woman, or an account of what a woman is, which does not fall foul of my criticism below. But I have yet to be given any except ones which fall under the unacceptable option 1, 2, and 3.
What's the problem with trans activism's understandings of woman? For simplicity, I will mainly use woman as my example, but the argument would equally apply to what counts as a man.
First, it is important to make clear the distinction between biological sex and gender, or the acrimony of the debate about the GRA arises because there are different views about what sex and gender are. But currently, the law respects this distinction. Gender Recognition Act of 2004, Equality Act of 2010. So let us start from there. With this in mind, we can use female/male to pick out the sex of the individual and women/man to classify their gender.
It is claimed by transgender people and those who support them that the gender to which transgender people belong does not match the biological sex to which they belong, or in more extreme versions of the theory that biological sex does not even in fact exist, or that sex is non-biological and determined by gender. In all these cases, a person's gender is independent of their biological sex. Being female is irrelevant to being a woman.
But once one divorces gender from biological sex like this, it is very difficult to see what the gender categories man and women are, either being a woman's association with gender roles, social roles, and behavior, which women typically perform, or is based on something internal to a person, the feeling of being a woman, perhaps.
Number one, if we accept the former account of womanhood, which considers performing certain womanly gender roles as determining who is a woman, this makes being a woman depend upon a stereotype of femininity, such as wearing dresses and makeup, nurturing, rearing children, being emotional, and so on.
This version of womanhood is regressive, since it's based on stereotype, which females have fought against for centuries now, and would often regard as being imposed upon them rather than being intrinsic to their nature.
It is also deeply implausible. Engaging in stereotypically feminine behavior cannot be sufficient to count as a woman, since this would imply that females who break with feminine stereotypes and engage in stereotypically manly behavior are not women but men. A definition of woman which makes many females transgender, regardless of how they feel about it themselves, is clearly untenable.
Number two, if we broaden the account of womanhood based on gender roles to say that the category woman and man are not anchored to the traditional, mutually exclusive stereotypical roles, then the distinction between women and men disappears. This broader view ditches the traditional restrictive stereotypes and allows that men and women can do anything the other does. But then one can legitimately ask where the difference between them lies.
If a woman and a man can engage in exactly the same roles and types of behavior, and yet performance of that role is what determines the difference between them, then there is no difference between them. Remember, biology can't be used here if one thinks that people can be transgender at all.
Number 3, given that the outward manifestation of behavior of the performance of social role does not determine what a woman is, we now turn to accounts which assert that gender is based upon something internal to the individual, a deeply held feeling or conviction that one is in the wrong body or that one is a woman, although male body. This version of the definition invites philosophical question about what this feeling is and how we can accurately determine whether it is present.
The biological basis for this feeling is extremely controversial. There are no notable differences between male brains and female brains except size, for instance, and the equivocal evidence which indicates apparent differences between trans women and non-trans males is only seen in those with gender dysphoria severe enough to seek hormone treatment and full surgery, people who are already covered by the GRA 2004.
We could allow that it is possible that there is a biological basis for feelings of being transgender in such people, and thus will exclude them from the discussion. But these pre- and post-op transsexuals are now a minority in the transgender community, which leaves a large number of transgender people who are not dysphoric with no biological basis for their condition.
This presents some serious problems. What is this feeling based upon if it is not biological? Why do people seem to lack this feeling if they're not transgender? How is it different to being convinced one is a dog or had a past life or is younger than one's true age? The belief that one is an animal is not particularly uncommon among children, but we do not affirm that they are a different species.
It is extremely unwise to accept any of every individual affirmation that they are transgender without further evidence. First, there are good philosophical reasons based on the work of Wittgenstein to think that the criteria for kind membership must be public to be meaningful. Women has no meaningful meaning if it can't mean different things to different individuals in virtue private subjective feelings when no one has a way to ascertain whether a feeling is reported by different people or of the same type.
Second, as I've shown in research on humankind, an individual's affirmation that he or she belongs to a certain kind or has a certain condition is unreliable. Some individuals say this to be deliberately misled, while others hold a genuine belief about being of a certain kind when they are not of that kind.
Social pressure, the environment, and the attitude of peers and others can influence someone to accidentally self-identify as a group to which they do not belong. People may sincerely believe that they are of that kind, and if accepted to the group, their conviction may strengthen as other people treat them as belonging. In the case of gender identity, they may sincerely believe that they are women, and this belief will gain credence if others confirm it, even if they are not.
The fairy tale of the emperor's new clothes is relevant here. Furthermore, other male-bodied people may deliberately self-identify as women in order to gain access to women-only spaces. The situation presents difficulties both legally and philosophically. Eligibility for a GRC should not be made available to everyone who claims to have a subjective feeling that they are a woman.
On this account, anyone who says that they are a woman would count as a woman, and that seems both dangerous to females and absurd. To avoid these consequences, it is important to retain some gatekeeping procedure which determines whether someone is eligible to change gender or not.
However, even in this medical or legal gatekeeping is problematic. In the case of people who believe themselves to have diseases or psychiatric disorders, it is possible to observe and diagnose fairly reliably on the basis of symptoms and to rule out those who are mistakenly affirming that they have a particular condition.
But as we have seen above, it's impossible to characterize what a woman is on the basis of gender roles and how an individual acts without relying upon outdated stereotypes of women, which many women would reject. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a feeling. Thus, unlike in the case of other kinds which humans belong to, there's no external observable evidence that a male-bodied person is really a woman. There is, to this date, no objective findings or testings.
None of the available options 1, 2, or 3, or combinations of these, gives a workable account of what a woman is, which is not tied to traditional gender stereotypes. There is no feminist way to understand what a woman is in such as a way that it could be true that trans women are, in fact, women.
Which alternative remains at this point? We either need to bring biology back into the picture so that being a woman depends upon being female. Crucially, this does not amount to the gender essentialist thesis that being female determines that one follows traditional female stereotypes, but amounts to accepting that womanhood is a version of 2 plus female biology, or we need to be done with gender entirely and say that women picks up neither natural nor a societal constructed kind.
But we accept this latter view. If we accept this latter view, females still need the protections afforded them in the Equality Act of 2010. In the absence of any definition of women-only spaces would have to become female-only spaces in order to provide the present protection for female adults and children.
And I think that's why the third gender option would be a very good option. And that way all trans people could unite and have their own little ching-dings and, you know, play sports against each other and, you know, yeah, stuff like that. Because the other, you know, it's like you can't go by stereotypes. You can't go by things that you like to do that, you know, you think that opposite sex does. And because you did that, then that means you're, no, that doesn't work that way. It just makes absolutely no sense. And basically that's what everybody's using, you know, as their, okay, it's, there's a lot of weird stuff going on with this transhumanism. In fact, we watched a video today of, I forgot the name already.
Martina Rothblatt.
Yeah, they are really treading in the grounds of harvesting organs from pigs and creating robots that you could actually program with every cloning type of personality of a person. And I think even trying to get their, I don't know how they managed to do that, and get their consciousness into this robot. And it's like really sci-fi bizarre things. Anyway, transhumanism is an ideology which holds that humans must harness technological advancement to take an active, intelligent role in our own evolution and the evolution of our species. When we think about these developments as a society, we tend to consider them in a relation to the improvement to the human race as a whole. However, we must begin to consider the profound implications for the sovereignty of the individual and the primordial question of what it means to be human.
When the transhumanist movement began a few decades ago, its ideas had more in common with speculative science fiction than reality. But inspired by Darwinian theory, the notion of human-directed intelligent evolution has flourished alongside recent technological developments.
The transhumanist perspective insists that humans have a distinctly separate mind and body, and that what happens to one need not affect the other. Understood in this way, apparently unrelated movements in biotech, tech, and social justice reveals themselves to be part of the same transhumanist project and aim at the same objective, liberating the human being from the limitations of their body.
Cleaving consciousness from the brain requires a proper understanding of what consciousness is, and certainty that it can operate independently of the mind from which it emerges. Philosophers and scientists alike are, for the time being, in agreement that these preconditions are beyond our reach. However, research is advancing rapidly. Experiments in reanimating slaughtered pig brains are being conducted by neuroscientists at Yale.
Investigations into creating a complete diagram of the brain signal and connections with the aim of encoding memory and personal identity and copying that information to an artificial neural network are underway. In times, it is hoped that this will allow a duplicate of an individual's memory and experiences to survive the death of their material body.
This all seems far-fetched, and it should, but so has every great human innovation at inception. It should not be surprising that we are finally applying our tech to ourselves. So much of this is already possible or on the brink of becoming so. Mentally controlling artificial prosthetic limbs that are not connected to one's body, receiving text messages directly in one's brain, stem cell and mitochondrial DNA research, toward life extension, 3D printable organs, Turing test passable chatbots, nanobots made of folded DNA strands designed to repair the body in a minimally invasive way, gene editing, and so many more examples.
All these tech sounds very cool and exciting, and it is. It is imaginative, creative, and powerful. But we need to come to terms with the profundity of its implication. Is past progress is an indication we will willingly sacrifice part of our autonomy in the name of advancement. Those who want to copy and upload their neurological minds into a synthetic biotechnical nervous system are unlikely to be deterred by the prospect of relinquishing some of the existing capabilities.
In the service of an impulse that craves immortality, we help children develop religious ideas that promise eternal life and seek the kind of recognition that keeps our names alive long after we die. But with every freedom we gain through tech, we sacrifice some autonomy. Smartphones grant us access to a world of roadmaps and obviate the need for self-orientation. The human memory is no longer required to store or recall much now that vast resources of information are only a click away on a mouse. We have already willingly given up so much in the name of access and convenience that we barely notice each time we are asked to surrender a little more.
You know, and it's really sad because I used to remember phone numbers all the time. I don't know any phone numbers anymore because it's all a little thing.
Yeah.
That's dumbing us down. Transhumanists push towards a remaining of the humanity and our shared future is a primary component of three growing culture trends: artificial intelligence, human augmentation, and the transgender phenomenon. The means of effecting these transformative developments are entirely technical and promise liberation from reproduction, liberation from disease and mortality, and liberation from the body itself.
Theoretically, artificial intelligence, or AI, will provide the repository for a liberated consciousness. Though we have not fully yet understood what consciousness is, that will not prevent experimental attempts to isolate and transfer it, to use it to control bodies that are not our own, and to augment it with biotech or hard tech.
Once these goals become attainable, AI will be the mean of implementation. AI is about more than creating facsimils or cognizant beings. It's about augmenting and supplementing the original human form. Adding human elements to tech and tech to the human is part of the same project. It is hoped that AI will create pathways to connect mind to cloud, to give an AI augmented brain instant access to vast stores of information. Conversely, this will also allow the mind to be accessible to others, allowing for the experience of mental telepathy and the emergence of a collective consciousness.
AI is already making rapid strides in human companionship. The lonely elderly adore robotic pets, using them as a repository for the love and affection that no human companion wishes regularly to receive, and with none of the practical responsibility. The demand for sex bots continues to grow, and I just saw something where they said they open brothels that have sex bots in them. As people who lack intimacy or want to pursue obscure fetishes clamor to have their itches scratched. Cybernetic caregivers can help to solve nursing shortages. Is that like the Jetsons when they had little Ruby the robot?
Yeah.
AI augmented weaponry can tally forth into dangerous territory and so on.
Like RoboCop. Human augmentation, also known as biohacking, has developed from a combination of the aesthetics of body modification and emerging biomedical developments. On its face, biohacking resembles a counterculture fad born out of the trends such as tattooing, piercing, or tongue splitting. But the implications are more than skin deep at a biohacker's endeavors to proactively augment their bodies with technology.
Radio frequency identification, or RFID chips, can now be implanted subdermally and used for identification, electronic payments, opening security doors, or offloading information such as medical records. In this way, the body becomes the key, the debit card, and the receptacle for information the mind cannot retain.
Magnetic implants give the wearer the extrasensory perception of magnetic fields or the ability to perform party tricks such as attracting paper clips and bottle caps to a fingertip. The community of grinders, as they call themselves, favors self-experimentation and trying out new body hacks on willing participants, such as Jonas Salk first tested his world-changing polio vaccine on himself.
There are limitless possibilities in this area of research and application. The replacement of healthy limbs with higher functioning prosthetics or organs with artificially grown hearts, lungs, livers instead of cadaver parts. Unlike the fleshy limbs and organs with which we are born, these prosthetics and replacements will be connectable to wireless monitoring so that their efficacy can be reviewed and managed.
As these devices become interconnected, the human body becomes part of the Internet of Things. Just as artificial intelligent beings will be interconnected, so too will human bodies be interconnected with other humans and machines. Like, what is that? The Terminator, the rise of the machine or something.
As do-it-yourself body hackers trick out their meat machines, technologies such as CRISPR gene editing software and artificial wombs further the intentional biomechanization of the human form. In one lab, human beings will be edited on a genetic level from the isolation of mitochondrial DNA for the purposes of life extension to eradication of genetic deformities, diseases, and implementation of parental preferences. And in another, humans will be artificially gestated.
Both of these concepts speak to a dramatic shift in our relationship with both our bodies and our children, liberating the body from reproduction liberties, humanity from our own physical continuation. At first glance, reproductive advocates may tout this as progress, but removing reproduction from our bodily purview does not only liberate us from the body, it also subjects us to the tyranny of the mind. Removing the body from reproduction is primarily the elimination of women from the process of creating human beings, which we're seeing now already. And when Phil said, well, we're not just reproductive, but we are. That it was our sole purpose. You know, back in the day when, what God said to Adam and Eve after they go and replenish the earth. I mean, reproduction is a big thing with humans, you know?
Liberation from reproduction is liberation from sex, both in act and biology, at which point gender truly becomes fashion with no remaining foundations in the story of human origins. So we're talking about functionality and loss of function.
Dysfunctionality is what transgenderism is. Transgender advocates will answer that we are more mind than body, and this is what makes transgender ideology an essential component of the drive towards humanism acceptance. Whether transgender advocates realize this connection or not, a Twitter research reveals that many do.
The ongoing effort to change language and redefine male and female so they refer to something other than sexual dimorphism is designed to establish a Cartesian mind-body dualism in which the mind can dominate body to such an extent that personal subjectivity can decisively contradict biological reality.
Transgender practice is the ultimate biohack. The claim that one has been born in the wrong body is a total rejection of mind-body unification, and a statement that mind and body can be so desperate that the body must be thoroughly altered to match the mind's perception of how it ought to be.
Contrary to popular perception and much of the transgender movement's own rhetoric, transgender activism is not about compassion and dignity. Although transgender advocacy is couched in the language of oppression and identity, the idea that it is merely the latest facet of an ongoing civil rights struggle is a misconception.
In the current cultural climate, to question the concept of transgenderism is to question the right of trans individuals to exist. This is an extremely effective strategy that deters the skeptical from digging into an ideology by labeling them a bigot for doing so.
But the implications of transgenderism are so serious and far-reaching that questions must be asked. At issue is not simply societal acceptance of people with alternative views or lifestyles, but the most fundamental aspects of what it means to be human.
It is no anomaly that the movement is hitting its cultural stride in the debate over pronouns. The first step is changing how we think about our bodies, and what it means to be human is to change how we speak about these things. Transgender speech codes demand that we renounce our bodies' basis in biology and instead consider them constructive, arbitrary, and somehow unjust societal expectations.
We are not to think about mother and father as reproductive terms, but as culturally specified relationships. This aggressive effort to change and police the use of language and to redefine terms like male and female, to deny the sexual difference characteristic of all mammals, is designed to uncouple mind from body and humans from evolutionary and reproductive logic. Instead, an ideology of emotion is to be given over to dominion over biological reality.
With the widespread of acceptance of human augmentation, biotech, AI, and transgenderism, we are removing agency from the human body and granting it entirely to the mind. But our humanity lies not in our consciousness, but in the biological bodies from which the consciousness arises. It is our bodies that suffer pain, spectacular sensation, and that feed our minds with data about the external world and our relationship to it.
In its various forms, transhumanism is an attempt to reify an illusory mind-body dualism that has consequences well beyond what we can currently imagine. This is an idea that is advancing without a constituency. As long as transhumanists are the only ones focused on the issue, they can effect enormous changes in the absence of a large constituent base, because ethics conversations lag behind huge advancements in tech and identity politics.
But concerns we perceive to be on the fringe of culture or esoteric and only vaguely relevant to some distant future are in fact part of a giant ideological redefinition of humanity. If we do not attend to these debates and their implications, we're going to awaken one day to find that developments have overtaken us, that is too late, and that our bodies are of no importance.
What we forget is that the mind must serve the humanity of the body in suffering, joy, pleasure, pain, tickles, itches, even death. Without that submission, the mind is nothing but ego. Without any checks on its power or influence, to be a mind without a body is to have no relationship to the physical world and no stake in it.
If we perceive ourselves and others to be disembodied minds piloting meat machines, bodies of mere matter that do not matter, what horror will be capable of inflicting on the bodies of others? When we are renounced on our humanity, we forget what it means to inflict pain and to suffer.
Choice, the determining factor, resides with each individual alone. The transhumanist rights are in at least one respect. The responsibility for humanity lies not with the state nor any NGO, but with each of us. In awarding the mind complete power and authority over the flesh, we are not liberating ourselves, but submitting to the oppression of a consciousness we do not yet properly understand. The risk is that we only belatedly realize that transhumanism is oppression disguised as liberation.
And that's what we're seeing. And we're being so desensitized with everything that is happening in the world. It's like they're throwing gas, or what is it, smoke bombs and children. They're just desensitizing us completely with everything that we're seeing and everything we're doing. And they're like, oh, the mind and the body is not connecting, and you're born wrong, and the mind is, and it's like, it's all, I mean, you read all this stuff, and it's like, what's this occultist mentality that this transhumanism, that this transgenderism is bringing forth in the world? It's crazy. And with all of this and all the stride that trans people are making, you know, there are many regrets that are being seen and continue. And I think more and more will be actually, you know, put out for people to see. This is a trans man who regrets a sex operation that he had 15 years ago.
And I can't wait until we get our new Christmas present.
Oh, yes.
Because my butt
I know. These chairs are
is
not.
in pain.
I know. I'm going to share some of these. So first of all,
We bought our futon here anticipating our cats.
right,
We
and it's
bought
not
the
very
chairs
comfortable.
that we bought anticipating our cats because we want to spend a lot of money on it.
Right.
But we sacrificed our comfort.
But we are getting some really nice recliner rockers.
Yes, and they're coming
Friday, I know. They were supposed to be here on December
to our
10th.
show out of those pictures.
Yes, well, we might move this guy.
Who knows?
Who knows what we're gonna do? But anyway, Lee Harris was born Debbie Kramer, and let me see if I could share the actual picture. Maybe you could read while I share the stuff here.
Phil says, don't give in to the propaganda. A photograph is constructed, not the truth. People are more upset about a photo than about decades of drone bombing.
What does he mean by that?
I'm not sure.
Not quite sure what you're
Just for
trying.
this point.
Yeah, I don't know because we were reading a bunch of stuff. But anyway,
We got
this.
something playing here.
Oh, do I? Let me close it. Here we go. This is what was their name? Lee Harris was born Debbie Kramer, but asked for gender reassignment after years of sexual identity struggle. At 44, Debbie began private testosterone treatment a day after the first appointment with the doctor. Her breasts were removed after just 3 months. It began an 11-year journey of surgery. But after years of counseling, Lee finally discovered he wasn't transgender, but was instead a woman with complex post-traumatic stress disorder after years of sexual abuse.
It was too late for Lee, now 60, and he now feels like a woman trapped in an approximation of a male body. He is now on the NHS waiting list for an operation to reverse the reassignment. Lee said, I looked in the mirror through the eyes of that terrified 15-year-old girl and see this funny little man staring back at me.
I'm a woman. I'm still Debbie. I wish I could turn back the clock and just have the foresight of what a nightmare the next 15 years would be. I'm a woman. I'm not meant to be a bloke. I'm trapped. It's a complete mess. Where do you even start? I just regret the decision.
Lee believes he should never have been allowed to transition and wishes he had been offered counseling. He thinks dissatisfaction with his female body stemmed from sexual abuse at the hands of his father. After his dad left when Lee was age 2, they were estranged until he was 14.
The first time Lee stayed at his dad's, he raped him. He struggled with his sexual identity for years, but went on to marry his long-term friend, Alan, in December of 1997. He first heard of transgender and gender reassignment surgery in 2002 while watching Kilroy on TV. See, everybody's watched something on TV. Yeah.
He sought help, and a private psychiatrist prescribed a 2-week course of testosterone. 3 months later, he had a 3,500-pound operation to remove his breasts. Years of operations followed as he made the transition to a man.
It wasn't until 2013, when promoted by the Jimmy Savile scandal, he told police of his father's abuse and began to realize he had made a terrible mistake. He then sought counseling.
Lee said, I was traumatized by what had happened in my life, and it was misdiagnosed as being transgender. Looking back now, I realize it was simply a feeling that if I didn't have a vagina, I wouldn't be raped. I wished I could wake up as Debbie and realize that the last 15 years were just a bad nightmare.
Lee's father died of emphysema in 2013 before he could be charged. Lee still lives with Alan, although they are no longer married. He is now awaiting treatment at a specialist gender identity clinic and is encouraging others to seek therapy before surgery. He added, I miss the old Debbie. And this is very common with a lot of trans folks. A lot of them won't come out and say it. A lot of them, it happens right away. A lot of them, it takes 15 years to realize. A lot of us have gone through sexual abuse, mental abuse, all sorts of childhood traumas. And we think that by changing our gender because we didn't like to play with dolls as a girl, or we didn't like to play with whatever as a boy, that we're born in the wrong body. And as we've read throughout with the transhumanism and with what it means to be a woman and all these things that we read, surely there's got to be more and a bigger explanation than what we have been provided with a one-size-fits-all approach.
Phil says, I mean that nobody cares about the war on terror, but we are agonizing over a photo because of Trump. This is the goal of propaganda.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we're the believer that a lot of the stuff that we're seeing in the world today are false flags, and they're trying to change the views and the mentality of people through the media, through these pictures, through this manipulation, because we're easily duped down. I mean, gosh, we're like one giant programmable machine, and the media says one thing, and they try to see how people react to certain things before they actually implement it. And they're constantly with commercials and TV shows and the media programming our brain. It's almost like an MK Ultra.
Well, our last article is another article about the trans community and how they keep shoving things down people's throats
Yeah.
and stuff. And it's called The Real World Consequences of Submitting to the Transgender Zeitgeist.
Sympathy for transgender people cannot trump objective reality. Last week, a member of my Orthodox Jewish congregation approached me in synagogue to tell me a story. Many of women in the congregation exercise at a females-only gym for modesty purposes. The gym is successful. Its main constituency is religious women who don't wish to be stared at by men or to see men in various states of undress.
According to the congregation member this month, a transgender woman, a biological male who suffers from gender dysphoria, came to the gym. This man, who retains his biological characteristics, i.e. penis,
Right?
then entered the locker room and proceeded to disrobe. When told by management that he could use a private dressing room, he refused, announcing that he was a woman and could disrobe in front of all the other women.
Now tell me that's not a fetish. Tell me that's not some sort of like validation and I am a woman, even though I have the right to be here. And although I'm making all these other women very uncomfortable, I don't care what they feel.
And he could use a private, this person could have used a private dressing room.
Yeah, but they don't want special bathrooms. They don't want special. I mean, you want to give me a unisex bathroom, singles? I mean, my own privacy. I'm there. I'd rather do that than have to go into a restroom that is dirty. Somebody just took a dump.
Room.
Yeah, dump because I can't use the urinal because I don't have nothing to use the urinal with. So I have to use the stall. Half the time when I go use the stall, it's either full of poop, it's disgusting, pee all over the floor. So if I were to get I'd be like, I want to go there,
Yeah, I mean, a private dressing room, that's nice to be able to have.
I know, you have your
it's
privacy.
like, what's your point?
Yeah.
If you don't want the private dressing room, so what's the point? You want them to see your private part?
What's that called? Vargery? No, when people like
Voyeurism
and just their own fetishistic thing that they have to have this validation. Oh, look at me.
But what's the validation of a woman seeing that you have a penis?
A validation that they are being in the woman's locker room with other women, which makes them feel like they're more of a woman than they really are. It's a sick mind type of thing. The predictable result, many of the actual biological women began canceling their memberships. When the management asked people higher in the chain, they were simply told that to require the man to use a private dressing room or to reject his membership would subject the company, get this, to litigation and possible boycott. So the gym will simply have to lose its chief clientele because a man with a mental disorder believes he has the right to disrobe in front of women.
As it turns out, there are indeed public policy consequences to the question of transgender pronouns. Those public policy questions all revolve around a central issue, and that is, can subjective perception trump objective observation? If the answer is yes, tyranny of the individual becomes the order of the day. We must all bow down before the subjective wants, needs, and desires of people who require special protection from life's realities. We must re-educate generations of people to ignore science in favor of feelings. We must strong-arm individuals into abandoning central planks of their own morality in the name of sensitivity.
It's not just women who wish to avoid indecent exposure, it's doctors. Take, for example, a New York Times column this week by a transgender woman named Andrew Long Chu. The article titled, "My New Vagina Won't Make Me Happy," argues that sex reassignment surgery, a gross euphemism, given the sex is not assigned in the first place except by biology, should be available to anyone based simply on want. Chu acknowledges that his new vagina is in fact not a vagina but a wound, and that it will require regular painful attention to maintain. Chu acknowledges that his dysphoria has ballooned since he began transition.
Chu admits, "I was not suicidal before hormones, now I often am." Still, Chu says he should be given transgender surgery based simply on want. Non-malfeasance is a principle violated in its very observation, Chu states. Its true purpose is not to shield patients from injury, but to install the medical professional as a little king of somebody else's body.
Meanwhile, Twitter announces this week that it would seek to ban those who misgender or dead name transgender people. In other words, if you're not the Chelsea Manning or Carolyn Jenner is a man, if you know that they are, or if you use the name Bradley or Bruce with regard to the aforementioned transgender people, Twitter could ban you from repeated and or non-consensual slurs. So you'll be abide by subjective self-definition or you will be censored. Twitter recently banned a leftist feminist to merely noting that sex is biological and that men cannot become women, which is all true.
And it doesn't stop there. As Walt Heyer, the Federalist, reports, a Texas divorce case now pits a mother who dresses her 6-year-old male child, James, as a girl and calls him Luna, against James' father, whom she is accusing of child abuse for refusing to treat James as a girl.
Heyer reports she's also seeking to require him to pay for child's visit to a transgender-affirming therapist and transgender medical alterations, which may include hormone sterilization starting at the age of 8. James, as it turns out, prefers being called James and being treated as a boy by his father.
That's not stopping mom, though, refusing to abide by the judgment of a 6-year-old, or in this case, a 6-year-old. Mom could mean losing your child in a world where we treat sex as malleable.
There are real-world consequences to the deliberate rewriting of basic biology and the substitution of subjectivity to objectivity. It means rewriting business operations, school curriculums, medical treatment standards, censorship rules, and even parenting.
Sympathy for those who suffer from gender dysphoria is obviously proper. No one wants transgender people harmed or targeted. But sympathy for a mental disorder should not trump either objective reality or competing priorities based on those objective realities.
The Emperor in New Clothes is not a story about the wonderful sensitivity of a population educated on the subjective desires of a ruler's ensconced in sartorial self-definition. Falsehood crumbles in the light of day, no matter how sympathetic we are to those who wish to perpetrate it, unless force becomes the order of the day, which is what we're seeing becomes, crazy stuff. So what does he say here?
He said, LOL, he refused, of course. This is a person with an agenda.
Of course. I can understand why women don't want men walking around naked in their dressing rooms, but as a man, I honestly wouldn't think twice if a transgender male did the same. It's different,
Yeah, it would be different.
Yeah, I've never luckily had any, when I used to use LA Fitness, I used to go in the locker room, but I would never totally disrobe in front of the guy because they didn't want and I don't know how men are going to react. I mean, I don't know if I could get raped, beat up upon. I don't know what a guy could be thinking. I would never put myself in that kind of situation.
And I don't really see why a transgender person who was born male would think that this is appropriate behavior.
But a lot of them do.
I know, but I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. It just, to me, it's if you have your equipment special, it's beyond offensive to a woman.
Yeah.
It's like.
Well, it's like the guy wanted the waxing thing, and it's like women have a right to say no. I don't want to wax your ding ding. But look at how big of a deal that it became. It's very common. Bill also said I would just chalk it up to wildly out of control pubic hair situation.
But I wouldn't feel threatened, and I can understand why women would be creeped out. That's outrageous.
The kid deserves to know their father. Definitely. But like we mentioned earlier, the mothers, and a lot of time it's the mothers that have some sort of issue. They either have what's that called, Munchausen syndrome. They wanted a little girl and they didn't get the little girl, so they're going to make the little boy be a little girl. And the little boy's saying, "Hey, I want to be called James, and I'm a boy." And but
what we noticed though, mostly, is that fathers seem to be very silent about these issues. It's like, it's almost like they're hesitant to even speak up. It's like it takes a special type of mom to shove their, child in the direction of being gender non-conforming and stuff like that, and to really like provide for them that alternative space that they're craving or that they want to create for them. Because the dads are like, most of the time it just seems like they're disassociated from, you know, from their families or something. I don't know. Because I mean, when we've watched specials and stuff, it's like they never interview the dad.
No, it's always a mother. But and that's why the dynamic, one of the articles we read, that's usually it's a dysfunctional family where you see this kid who has a gender issue. It's stemming from a dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
You never see a family that's all together, all whatever, to have some sort of kid that has some sort of dysfunctional issues with their gender.
And it's almost like, it's always like the dads who need to be convinced of this reality. It's like Jazz Jennings' dad, Greg.
He didn't want it.
He didn't want it, right?
He didn't want it. I mean, it took, we to sit down with 2020, they wined and dined us, and Greg was just adamant. He was like, he didn't want any part of it. He's an attorney. I mean, Jeanette forced this down his throat, literally. And that's the only, and you see a lot of the glimpse throughout the series that he's like, he's not at all, you know, on board with it. He's been forced.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, it's like Jeanette.
Jeanette, yeah.
She like, you know, you could see it during the show. She does things behind Greg's back.
All the time.
She, you know, totally like, you know, pushes Jazz into doing certain things, you know, and Jazz is like, I really don't want to be an advocate anymore. Right. I don't want to do this, you know. And,
it's been that way from word go, you know. I mean, when I interviewed them on Transition Radio, Jeanette was very worried about Jazz's well-being. They were suicidal. They were going through a bunch of stuff. And this happened, it was probably like 2 or 3 years ago. And it was just, not more than that. It was like 4 years ago.
2013.
Yeah, 4 years ago. Or 5 even. But, you know, it's usually the mom that's orchestrating this. And Phil says, very insightful comment. It usually is the moms who are pressing it. They are because it kind of gives them some sort of identity, and it's part of that Munchausen syndrome. You know, I'm such a great mom. I'm so sympathetic to my child's need. I mean, you see Jeanette do that all the time, crying, and I love my Jazz, and, you know, and pushing everything that she wanted on Jazz, you know, to the point where I remember in one part of the show, Jazz didn't want that surgery.
No, Jazz was talking about just having and keeping the
parts, but it was so much pushed by Jeanette that it made Jazz feel like, yes, I want this. And it wasn't her idea. You know, people look back at the series and they start seeing, you know, the telltale signs.
And it's really sad because what happens is that there's basically a dysfunction in the family. You know, I mean, the mother is enforcing things that have no functionality.
No, not whatsoever.
For the future of their child. Their child will never be able to provide them with a grandchild.
Right.
You know,
unless they get a surrogate. They want the sister to be surrogate.
Yeah, they wanted their sister to be surrogate.
Yeah. And then the whole family dynamic was very abnormal. I mean, the brothers and sister felt left out. Everything was about Jazz. The whole world revolved around Jazz. All the parties, all the things revolved around Jazz in the show. They lost all their autonomy. You know, I mean, it's just, Jeanette pushed this to the limit, and she got exactly what she wanted. When she came to me and saw that I had popularity, she knew exactly what she was doing because she knew that she could get to where she wanted to if somebody was in the limelight. And that's what exactly happened.
And, you know, that's the thing about human behavior. And it's not just, you know, women with Munchausen syndrome. You know, I mean, men do it for approval of their wives to give them certain things because they're like, hey, baby, here's a gift for you. I bought this new house for you. It's all for you. And it's like, no, you're doing it for yourself. Yeah. So you need to ask yourself, why are these people pushing their children to transition? There must be a certain selfish aspect in it. Maybe it's the notoriety that they're going to be seen as some kind of loving mother of a different
and
child.
And Jeanette was a producer who got fired, and she loves the limelight. And what better way to get into the limelight is to have a child that's different. And back then, Jazz was very different. There was hardly no trans children in the limelight. So that gave her identity. That gave her purpose. Like that was going to put her family were exactly where she wanted, you know, with a
These
show.
parents can't handle their children aren't perfect.
Yeah, their children are
So they
perfect.
break them to fit the mold gender identity. It's sad.
It is very sad. It is because they don't want feminine boys. They don't want, or a lot of these parents, you know, they wanted a daughter, you know, in Janet's, in the Jennings case is they had two boys, they were twin, and they had the daughter, where she wanted another daughter, you know? And so I gave the boy, and it's like, oh no, that throws everything off. I want two boys and two girls, so I'm gonna make this one a girl come hell or high water. And that's exactly what happened, you know? And then Jazz didn't see any connection with the two brothers because the two brothers had themselves, so they wanted to be like the sister.
Mhm.
You know, you've got all sorts of like trauma-based dynamics that create the world and the mind and people thinking what they want to think regarding gender.
And you know what's happening with these parents is that it's pretty much no different than what they do to people in Iran who are different, who are gay. You know, they give them the ultimatum: either you transition to becoming a woman, or we will kill you.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, that's
you know, and that is not the extreme case here in this country with trans parents, but you know, society is almost like shoving them, you know, trans advocates and things and doctors in the medical community is shoving them in that direction and saying they need to transition or else we're not going to kill them, but they just might kill themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
If they don't do it.
And that, you know, that's been skewed, the suicide percentage, and it's actually the opposite is more true. People that transition, they're more prone to suicide than people that don't transition. But the advocates are using all these propaganda and all these lies to push the agenda forward the way they have. And they've done a great job. You have to like really, you know, give them my hand.
Short amount of time,
yeah, because I mean, it's incredible, you know. And Phil says, exactly, it's barbaric thinking disguised as being progressive. Exactly.
And there's nothing progressive about, you know, restricting people from being able to be themselves.
Exactly.
You know, I mean,
you're telling people that they have to be something they're not, even though they're thinking, I was born in the wrong body. No, there's nothing wrong with your body. You might be a boy or a man that likes more feminine things or like it's softer and you don't fit in with the boy crowd or the man crowd because you're different, and that's okay. That's okay. Just be you. But instead, society's telling you, you're different. We can't allow you to be different, so you've got to fit into the female box. You know, you got to cut your weenie. You got to do all this stuff, take dangerous hormones for the rest of your life. Your health is going to be shit, but you got to fit into society's box the way we want you to fit in. You can't be yourself. And that's a very dangerous thinking, just like the transhumanism is a very dangerous thinking. It's just the mind is controlling the body, and that is very dangerous, as that article mentioned.
Right. I mean, once the mind becomes more powerful than the body,
yeah,
you get into real dangerous grounds.
Exactly. Very, very dangerous grounds. And we're heading in a very dangerous time. And if people don't wake up and, you know, really start to think things through, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. All right.
I guess that's all we got for
That's
today.
Thank you so much, Phil, for joining us. And thank you, Chase, although I'm sure you're asleep or something, but you decided to catch the remaining of the show.
And Team joined us earlier.
And for all the other people that are watching, thank you for tuning in. You know, it's important to live in truth. It's important to live in reality. It's important to take note of what's happening in the world because history always repeats itself. And, you know, we're heading for a really terrible time, you know, if we don't wake ourselves up and find out that we're doing things very wrong, extremely wrong. And we're sacrificing children, you know, for the sake of waving our flag. And, you know.
Phil says, thank you. I love this stream. You guys are so awesome.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you so much, Phil. All right, guys. So we will see you next Tuesday, and we might make a video like we usually do in the middle. Sometimes Sundays we do a video. Sometimes. But
maybe by the Christmas.
Maybe by the Christmas. Yeah, and we'll probably have a little Christmas song special like we did one year. We play the
Florida.
Yeah. Linda plays the keyboard, I play the guitar, and so we might have to do something like that for the holidays, who knows. But thank you so much, Phil, once again, for your participation. participation and for all the great questions and comments. And yeah, thank you so much. Well, guys, we love you. But remember to always love yourselves too. Good night and have a good one. Bye.